Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my underground lair.
All right, welcome back to the underground lair for part 3, video part 3 for chapter 8. In this video, we're going to be talking about substitute distribution channels. This should be the shortest video in the sequence. There's really only one slide we need to talk about and just a few stories. So hopefully this will be the shortest one. When we get into the next one, part 4, it's actually so full of material that they had to break it up into 2 videos. Okay, so what do we mean by substitute distribution? Well, before we do that, what do we mean by distribution? I'm sure you're studying this in other classes, but distribution, the control of getting the product to the customer, is sometimes itself the major innovation. Walmart is a great example of this. Walmart's entire business model, the innovation that it came up with, was reducing the cost that was stuck in the distribution system. You know, prior to Walmart, stores would have significant amount of their square footage dedicated to storage of product in the back to replenish the shelves with, and Walmart got rid of all of that and converted the distribution channel, squeezed the money out of the distribution channel. So that's just an example of how important distribution is. But sometimes the substitute that we're worried about in Porter's 5 Forces is not a substitute product, but just a different way to distribute the same product. And Napster, at the end of the day, was an example of that exact case. So Napster was not producing substitute music. It was distributing the same music that the record companies were distributing on CDs. It just found an electronic way to distribute it. And it was that distribution channel that caused the problem. Ultimately, the record companies, what made them successful was that they controlled the means of producing the records and the CDs. They controlled the distribution to the record stores. And so it was almost impossible in those days for an indie band like we know today to get distribution other than through a record contract. They controlled distribution. Now with the internet, you're having many bands. You have these like YouTube stars that come from nowhere. I mean, I think, you know, Justin Bieber is an example of that, I think, right? I mean, they found him, he was discovered through these YouTube videos that I think his mom had posted of him, and that completely went around the record company system. Ultimately, he signs with major record labels because he can make so much more money doing that. But it's entirely possible now for bands to become popular, to have a following, and never have a major label record contract because the distribution has been disrupted. The mail order prescription story in the chapter is an example again of how the distribution of prescription drugs, it's not the drugs themselves that are the substitute, but just a different way, going around the pharmacists. And of course the pharmacists fought this to protect their franchise, ultimately losing that battle. And then satellite TV was another example, really interesting story there about how satellite TV disrupted the distribution of content over television. It completely changed it because you no longer were subject only to having cable channels or over-the-air broadcast. You now had this additional way to get all of that same content. So it's very important to understand the role of distribution and how a substitute distribution is sometimes enough to threaten an entire business model. One of the ways I think about this a lot, and I believe I mentioned this in another video, but in the grocery store, when you go to the grocery store, those aisles are effectively owned by large conglomerate companies. Beer is a great example of this. If you go to the beer aisle at Safeway, It looks like they have lots of different brands, and they do, but they're basically buying it from one or from maybe two distributors that control all of those brands. So the opportunity for smaller brands to break in to that aisle are very limited. And in fact, at the grocery store here at the Safeway here in Gig Harbor, you know, there's a brewery in Bremerton called Silver City, and I like their products, I like their beers, but you don't see them in the regular beer aisle. They're in another section of the store, because that beer aisle is bought and paid for by the distributors for the large brands. All right, I said this would be a short video, and I meant it. So if you have any questions about distribution channels, let me know. What sort of products do you think are frozen out of the market simply because they can't get distribution? I'd be interested to hear your examples and your stories. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in part 4A, the first of two parts that correlate to the high-tech patent strategies section of the shell text. Thanks, and we'll see you then.
Ha